I started this project because I was lonely. When I first came out as bisexual mid-last year, I was greeted with absolute acceptance from my close friends and family. And it was more than I could have hoped for. And when they asked me, how did I know? The only honest answer I could give was, I didn't, and then I did. I lived through all of my childhood and half of my teen years not knowing, not realizing what this thing was, because you don't expect it. It just never crossed my mind. So when I came out, I felt relief and a sense of accomplishment, and I felt so ready to enter the world and conquer any obstacle that stood in my way. And then the shadows of doubt began to settle in. The nervousness, the shaking of my hands, and the fear that settled over me every time I told someone new began to stir negative emotions within me. I began to see and sense the uncomfortable shifting and fidgeting from the people around me every time they remembered that I was attracted to girls. In retrospect, I realized they just needed a little time, and perhaps if I had talked about it more openly and shared my experiences, they would eventually come round and found a way to relate to me. But at the time, I didn't focus on the support and acceptance I had. Instead, I began to distance myself, isolate and alienate myself from my friends and family, because I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. I began to give myself a hard time because I couldn't understand why I hadn't known about this before. I'd never suffered any body image issues, and I've always known what I was able to accomplish, as long as I set my mind to it. But suddenly, I found I didn't know myself as well as I thought I had, and I felt the need to reevaluate everything I thought I knew. I became bitter and sensitive and defensive every time someone innocently made a comment about gay individuals or about my sexuality. And I became very difficult to be around. And all the while, I was sinking deeper and deeper into my toxic spiral of thoughts and slowly entering into a dark tunnel of self-loathing. Welcome. My name is Kat Reed, and today I will present to you a year-long process in the guise of a project titled Because We Are Diverse. The program reads that this presentation is about a project that examines gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender issues of today. From reading that description, you may expect that this presentation will present you with facts and figures. And I could very well do that. I could tell you that in many countries, such as Uganda, LGBTQ, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered and queer, are persecuted and even executed simply for being who they are. I could shock you all by informing you that the gay panic is still used as a legal defence, usually against charges of assault or murder in some states of Australia. And I could enlighten you all by saying that any married transgendered individual must first divorce their spouse before undergoing any legal changes to their gender. And while I still think that awareness on these issues is important, this is not really what this project is about. This project started because I needed to free myself from isolation and connect with other LGBTQ individuals, because I needed more visibility of their issues in my daily happenings, and I wanted more discussion. I wanted more people to understand what it was really like being LGBTQ. Our experiences, our thoughts, our opinions, and our outlooks. Because just because we support it doesn't mean we understand it. I began my trek with the desire to inform myself and others. So I started by collaborating with some teachers to include more education on LGBTQ issues in their Year 10 personal development class, what we call sex ed, here at Arana. I was also asked to speak with the Year 10s about my experiences and hand out some tried and tested resources. I'm also currently setting up some resources readily available for students. Help for things like mental health, sexual health, bullying, and of course, resources for LGBTQ youth. I wanted to find out the inner workings and clockwork of the minds and lives of other LGBTQ individuals. So I formulated a set of interview questions that touched on topics such as homophobia, coming out, and openness. And I started contacting musicians, public figures, students, really anyone willing to share. And I found that the more I conducted these interviews, the more I began to realize that there was a set of underlying streams of thought and concerns that were hinted at in every interview, a kind of commentary on some of the flaws in society that make it so challenging for LGBTQ individuals. One of the most interesting aspects that emerged from almost every person interviewed is that they wanted their audience to understand the idea that there cannot be definitive definitions of gender and sexuality, that the assumed binary functions of our society are incorrect, the idea that gender identity and sexuality are actually on a spectrum, that there are no metaphorical shiny boxes in which to put people into. More importantly, studies such as the Kinsey report have shown that the majority of people are seated somewhere along this continuum, and it's rare that anyone is exclusively heterosexual or homosexual. Every individual is unique, and sexuality and gender identity exist on a range of different possibilities and combinations that are flexible and constantly in flux, and all are natural. This is Joseph Harwood. I contacted Joseph on Facebook for an interview, and we conducted the interview via email. As you look at his picture, I want you to think about your initial reaction to his appearance. Perhaps you felt uncomfortable with his female appearance. Perhaps you thought it was funny. Perhaps you were jealous of how gorgeous he is. I know, I am. More likely you were confused as you thought he was female, or you assumed him to be transgendered. But Joseph isn't female, and he isn't transgendered. He isn't wholly male either in his gender identity. He exists somewhere on the spectrum, somewhere in the middle. Joseph is a successful makeup artist who has won many competitions for his clever male-to-female transformations. A successful YouTuber with plenty of tutorials and advice videos, he has a large following of over 35,000 subscribers to his channel. Now, Joseph identifies as two-spirited. This is an idea that has existed in Indigenous cultures, especially for thousands of years. The term defines a spiritually blessed individual who contains aspects of both genders of male and female in their appearance, their physicality, or behavior within their culture. Joseph strongly identifies with this idea, as he says growing up he had no outside influences that sculpted his identity. His soul is male and female, and he likes to express both. He's also attracted to all people, male, female, transgendered, and so on. Now, let me introduce Bunny Bennett. I contacted her via email, and we conducted the interview through Skype. Now, Bunny is transgendered. She is male to female, and she is most famous for her character as Rabbit in her band Steam Powered Giraffe. This is just a photo of her band. Her band has over 81,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel, over 1 million hits on their Rihanna Diamonds cover, and a large fan base following on social media. But most interesting is the fact that her character in the band is male. And she seemed quite comfortable with this duality in performing as male, but in her private life, female. In her interview, she heavily promoted the idea of a grey area that exists somewhere in the middle of the spectrum of gender. She recognised that this is where she sits at the moment, neither fully male nor fully female, but a combination of the two. And though she wishes to be fully female, it doesn't necessarily mean that in order to be truly happy, she has to change her physical gender to match. She knew it wouldn't solve all her mental and emotional problems, yet she felt that this was an expectation of her, that she wouldn't be complete without surgery. I'd just like to now show you an excerpt from the interview.
Hi, I'm Bunny Bennett, and I play Rabbit in the band Steam-Powered Giraffe.
If Steam-Powered Giraffe goes further than you expected and you end up having a lasting career, do you think there'll become a time where you'll just decide, okay, it's now time to become a full-time woman?
There's a lot of people that say transitioning to one or the other is the only way, and there's some people that say that transitioning is not the answer. And I think the gray area really scares people, and it scares me, and that's why I need to kind of be one or the other most of the time. I think we need to be more comfortable living in the gray area, and that's where I have to live right now. I don't have the money to transition, even if I wanted to, and I'm totally not sure. And painful surgery, is that going to be the golden ticket to happiness? No, it's not. If I transition, it might help some other things, but a lot of these issues, they go directly into the brain, and transgenderism is only one aspect of a lot of the problems a human can have. Not all my problems are caused by being transgendered, but just solving being born in the wrong body is not going to fix the multitude of other emotional problems that a human might have. I'm in the gray area right now, and that's really what I'm focused on, is trying to be comfortable in my own skin, regardless of gender.
Many more interviews were conducted, and many other interesting experiences and ideas were expressed. What I found interesting was the way in which each interviewee described how they came to terms with their identity. Robyn Archer, who is a loved Australian jazz performer, was interviewed, and she explained that she gradually became aware of her sexuality during puberty. And growing up in a time when homosexuality was very much an underground movement, she didn't realise there were other people like her until she found herself at a party one night in King's Cross, Sydney. Elise, a young lady I interviewed who was a school captain at her Catholic high school, was never given the chance to work through her sexuality and accept it, as she was outed, which means an individual's sexuality is told to everyone before they come out. The rumours spread like wildfire through her school, and that morning she walked out at recess and she had a phone full of nasty messages. She was obviously under a lot of pressure, and I can say that I think she handled it well. In contrast, both Libby, a young student I interviewed, and Joseph didn't enter any process of self-discovery and did not need to come out, as this is the way they've always been. Having recorded all the interviews with such openly shared insight, I thought it would be a shame to let these files waste away on my laptop. I thought it would be great to share these easily on social media and gain a wide audience so that people could see and understand LGBTQ related issues and their experiences. This is a screenshot of the blog I set up on WordPress, and of course it's titled Because We Are Diverse. I thought the blog could be the public outlet of all the thoughts, ideas and articles that I found while conducting the project. The blog contains recounts of some ideas and some of my own recounts of some news events, such as this one. I'm sure you're all aware of the ACT Marriage Equality Bill pass. And, of course, the interviews. Reflecting on the reasons I started this project, the loneliness and the need to talk about my ideas, I decided to conduct a few discussion sessions to invite other young individuals to present their ideas and thoughts. This is a poster for a discussion forum titled World Cafe I hosted for LGBTQ youth ages 12 to 25. It was held in the Griffith Community Hall, and we gathered together in a structured discussion while we ate some food. We recorded the essential ideas that were formed on butcher's paper, and this is one of the examples of one of the ideas that was written down on the butcher's paper. As you can see, this particular idea was labels and identifiers. I was also invited to attend a conference for the Christian community of Steiner schools in Sydney, and with the theme of equality. I facilitated a discussion much like the one conducted at the World Cafe, and it only lasted for an hour, but within that time we were able to touch on so many different ideas and opinions. And this is just a picture of the whiteboard where I just wrote down the ideas, and you can see there were so many ideas I actually ran out of room. Lastly, a movie night where a short documentary on transgenderism, a short film titled Love Is All You Need, and a full feature-length film called But I'm a Cheerleader was shown as stimulus material for a discussion forum with my college class. I was surprised by the depth, insight and knowledge these incredible people were able to display. And after each discussion event, everyone was buzzing with energy. And it was so inspiring to see them be brave enough to put forth their ideas and opinions and be open and so respectful of other people's ideas. Yet again, the more discussion forums that were held, the more I was able to piece together these ideas and link them into a spider web, each thread being suspended by the one before it. The first idea regarded sex and gender. The World Cafe participants questioned, how do we define gender? Is it based on physicality? We decided the answer was no, as transgendered individuals have a gender identity independent of their physical sex. But then it was asked, why does it even matter? Why do we even care if someone's gender identity is different from how we expect it? Why do we find it difficult to comprehend when people bend the lines of gender, as per Joseph Harwood and Bunny Bennett? But in actual fact, gender is an identity that sits on a spectrum, and it doesn't necessarily have to correlate to your physical sex. And if it does, consider yourself lucky. What we found was that Western society and Western culture has difficulty separating the two. Some Asian cultures have up to 5 genders, 2 of which correlate to our definitions of gender, one that correlates to intersex, and one that we just don't have any translation for. So why do we only have 2? Another link in the key chain of ideas was the treatments of labels and identifiers. The question was asked, why is it necessary to come out? Why is the default setting heterosexual? Who initiates these assumptions? Is it parents? Do parents subconsciously project a vision of what they hope their child to one day be, unintentionally including the person they will one day marry in the process? Could it be movies and TV? Do children pick up on these signals? Is it books? Is it music? Is it games? Is it their school, their teachers, their friends, their neighbours, strangers? But we already know. It's all of these. And these subliminal messages form a restrictive mental formula on being heterosexual, which is great if you're heterosexual, but if you're not, this formula programmed into us from a young age has to change. And for some, it's not easy. As annoying as it is, we don't receive a rainbow manual in the mail. On this topic of labels and identifiers, the World Cafe panelists found that for some, labels provide a kind of stability, a definitive way of knowing where people belong. But labels can be restricting. They often come with assumptions about your beliefs, your ideas, your opinions, your experiences, your behavior, your lifestyle, your character, your personality, that can create prejudices even within the LGBTQ community. And most of the time, these are incorrect. Throughout the presentation, I've been saying the term LGBTQ. This is to be inclusive to all labels and identifiers in the community, and it is the correct acronym to use. But as it was pointed out at the World Cafe, the acronym is constantly being added to, gaining more and more letters. And I think it's great that we're trying to be inclusive and recognize these different identities. But you have to admit, it's starting to become a bit of a mouthful. The question was, will we cover every possible nuance and combination there is, until eventually we are reciting the entire alphabet? Perhaps what we need is to redefine our definitions of sexuality and gender, to recognize all possibilities and the spectrum it is. And when you really think about it, the more we label ourselves, the more we segregate ourselves from society and from each other, and the more the LGBT community continues to be other. The last idea that joins the chain is, of course, homophobia. Not content with just stating that it exists, the participants dived in without any prompting and proceeded to look the lion in the mouth and find out why his teeth were so sharp, by uncovering the various reasons behind homophobic behaviour. It was suggested at the movie night that the phenomena of pack mentality among teens could further homophobic behaviour. The idea that the dynamic of a group and the pressure to be included could convince a person to possess a homophobic attitude or act violently and aggressively against LGBTQ individuals. This phenomenon is certainly the cause of many instances of bullying and violence, particularly in young teens. Another reason accentuated was fear. The fear of change in a negative direction. The fear that society is travelling on the road to ruin could be a major driver of negative reactions to gay rights, causing people to hold on passionately to traditional and historic values. But perhaps it is the ignorance of the true nature of human sexuality and gender identity combined with the fear, not only of the direction of society, but the fear that society, with its structures and morals, is flawed, and that one's own sexuality is not as one thought, that prompts such violent reactions. Perhaps it is those most unsure and insecure of their own beliefs that are those most afraid of homosexuality. There was one idea, however, that was presented to me at the Sydney conference that I had never heard before and never considered, and I wonder how many people think about it when they hear the word equality. With marriage equality being today's most significant battle for gay rights, the question was asked, is equality really the best deal? Now, when I first heard this, I thought, what do you mean? Of course we want equality. We want to be equal in the eyes of the law, and we don't want to be discriminated against and treated differently. But the alternative presented was freedom. Now, before you write this idea off, have a think. Do we want the equality to marry who we love, or do we want the freedom to marry whoever we love? Perhaps if we strive for freedom, all possibilities and combinations of orientation and identity would have no choice but to be accepted, and an open-minded view of one's own sexuality would exist. Instead of straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, we would just be human. My sexuality is still a work in progress. Some days, even now, I feel uncomfortable in myself and wish my circumstances were different. And sometimes I sink into familiar dark places that I've treaded before. And in all honesty, I was absolutely terrified to present today. I felt sick to my stomach, terrified to reveal my innermost thoughts and terrified of judgment. But I've realised this isn't about me anymore. What surprised me was the support that everyone gave me. I had people out of the blue message me to tell me that they supported the project. The willingness of people to help and propel the project forward was unexpected. The people dedicated valuable time and effort to help. I started by saying that I was lonely. But through this project, I've come to make connections with incredible, amazing people doing some spectacular things. And now I have so many LGBTQ community people I can call friend. This project was personal, and it started out of self-interest. I wasn't looking for a warm, fuzzy feeling. I was just happy if people listened to what I had to say. But the project took on a life of its own, fed by the people who involved themselves and immersed themselves, giving their all, the best of them, to enable this project to grow and help other LGBTQ people, and those who aren't, simply by keeping the conversation open. The blog itself has reached nearly 4,000 views in the couple of months it's been active. The Bunny Bennett interview, which you saw earlier, has received over 9,000 views and counting. And the comments in the videos, the way in which these strangers are sharing their stories and relating to what was said makes me proud. This project has been a roller coaster of self-discovery, And while my sexuality is still a work in progress, and I'm not 100% there, I've discovered so much about myself in the process. I've discovered that the reason I felt isolated at the beginning of this was because I didn't trust in the support I had. But I've learnt my lesson, and I've trusted you today. If you take one thing away from this project, I hope it will be that discussion on this topic is important. And by gathering other people's ideas, opinions, and experiences, we can come to a greater understanding of our own sexuality and gender identity. Many of the topics and ideas I've expressed are open-ended questions, and for most, I don't have an answer. The answers will have to come from you, from what you take on and what you consider. I said at the beginning I wanted to look into the lives of LGBTQ people and show what it was really like being LGBTQ. But while we have similar experiences, we are all different, just like our heterosexual counterparts. Our orientation is a facet of the many that make up our identity. And if we take away orientation from the mix, we are in fact no different. So why should it matter? Why should we be denied certain rights? Why should we be treated differently? Why should we be isolated and lonely? I've learnt to be brave, I've learnt to be accepting, patient, and to trust, and to most of all, be true to myself. Because humans are a multitude of ideas, opinions, experiences, and personalities, not just sexuality and gender. Because some of us are students, teachers, musicians, firemen, policemen. Some of us are two-spirited. Some of us play in a musical pantomime robot band. Because there are many possibilities. Because we are human. Because we are diverse. I'd like to finish with this quote that Robyn Archer said during her interview. And I think it summarizes the most important thing I found out from doing this project. And I want any LGBTQ individual who is feeling as I did at the start of this to feel the support there is and know that they are not alone. So I'll ask you all, can we say this together so that anyone feeling unsure of their sexuality knows we have their back? Ready? It's a revolution to come out. But once that's achieved, you have a massive local, national, and even international fraternity and sorority of people who are like you. Thank you. Thank yous to get through. First of all, I'd like to thank Stars of Hope for sponsoring me and lending me money to host my events. I'm feeling lightheaded. I'd like to thank all those I interviewed, including Joseph Harwood, Bunny Bennett, Libby, Elise, and Robyn Archer, for sharing their ideas and their thoughts and experiences so openly and being so courageous. I'd like to thank Friday Night Lip Service, Diversity ACT and the Youth Board, Agenda Agenda, Fuse Magazine, BitBent, AIDS Action Council, and all of those people who helped promote my project and helped spread the message. I'd like to thank Paris Wilson for having a 2-hour-long chat with me on Skype. I'd I'd like to thank Joe Camira and Tyrell for adopting me as their second family member. Dunya at Bit Bent for providing me with advice. All those who came to the discussion events and helped and actually came up with the ideas that I expressed today. Chris and Melissa, of course, for helping organise everything and providing me with support when I didn't think I could do it. Milton, of course. Where are you? There you are. For putting up with me, for dealing with me when I was a little hysterical and a little unsure. And of course, Cheryl Neckfapil, I want to give her a huge heartfelt thank you. She was my mentor and she's the school chaplain, and she wasn't able to be here today, unfortunately, but she dedicated so much of her time, so much of herself, and I just can't put into words. Of course, Jane Watson, for believing in me when I didn't and providing me with support at all hours of the night when I was hysterical and crying. You're the person I call to talk to. Thank you for being such an amazing friend and allowing me to open up. My family, I love you so much. Thank you for being so proud and supporting me, and, you know. Of course, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to me. Thank you for everybody.